What's the good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So Garrett Wilson's back in his bag. He's calling out Nathaniel Hackett, our offensive coordinator. He's calling out head coach Robert Saleh. And this is not just in regard to his usage, but really the creativity of the offense as a whole. So on the Bart and Hahn show or podcast, he had this to say. I don't think we do a lot of different stuff, to be honest. I watch football on Sundays and I see a lot of teams mix it up and stuff like that. I don't think we do that. I think we know our identity. It's just about going out and executing it or figuring out if it's going to work. I don't think we're trying a lot of different things. I know personally, my route tree hasn't been what it has been the last 2 years. As far as the stuff I've been running, it's just about figuring out if it's the right identity and whether it's going to win games. Now, the one of the biggest pieces for this, right, would be that when you take a look at his usage, I seen some stuff about his route tree. It's been very limited. You can see him on like some quick fades. Definitely a ton of fade routes, right? Specifically, seen them lined up on the left side. But then you have a lot of slants. You maybe have a couple go route type things going on, but outside of that, there really hasn't been a ton of creativity. I think week one, we saw him get a handoff on a motion play. And outside of that, it has been very, very basic. And it gives me shades of seeing the explosion of Elijah Moore over the span of a 6 to 8 week period. And this was back when we had LaFleur. And then suddenly nothing, right? The next year, improved, better pieces around him, and we see him get used essentially as a decoy. And I'm not saying that's what's happening with Garrett Wilson here, but one of the few attractive things about Nathaniel Hackett when we had the signing announced from him coming over from the Broncos was there was a period of time for him in the Broncos, and I think this lasted actually the majority of his tenure as well, where he was leading or near the top of the league in developing game plans that helped his receivers have separation. I think it was like 2.8, 3+ yards of separation or something on average for his receivers over the course of, I think he lasted 12 or 14 games. So that was one of the things I really was, hoping we could bet on, was that even if he was failing in many other areas, he would be able to find a way to continue to make Garrett Wilson look great, but find ways to have Mike Williams excel, find ways, especially with the chemistry we saw during the offseason, for Xavier Gibson to thrive, find ways to utilize the Yak King for an offense, which is supposed to be the purest form of a West Coast offense, as we've heard Aaron Rodgers say it. And he's seen what is it? I think he's seen maybe 28 snaps or something like that, or he's been on the field for two. It's something crazy, right? He's been very minimally used, especially considering the fact that it's not like Xavier Gibson is lighting the world on fire out of the slot, right? So taking a look at kind of where he's at to this point, he's on pace to really have career lows in everything, right? He is his yards per target. 5.6 right now is the lowest we've seen since last year, honestly. But the volume of targets he had was crazy. He's already had 2 drops. He's had 10 over his first 2 years. You're not seeing a ton of explosive throws or plays being generated by him, and he hasn't been a big part of this offense in terms of being like a utilitarian, I think is what I want to go. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Either way, he's a guy that brings speed. He's a guy that brings suddenness, explosiveness. He's an elite route runner, so we know that that's not a reason for why there's been such basic plays being created for him. And you add all that into the mix, and you get a extremely lackluster season, right? I came across something interesting from the perspective of how the outside NFL world may look at him. And the statement and the phrase was something along the lines of Wilson is a king without a crown, where the rest of the league knows how dangerous he is. And it almost just feels like they're thankful that the Jets are so inept that they can reduce the effectiveness of talents like this, right? So I think ultimately, I say all that to say something's definitely has to change right now. I'm still a huge proponent. This is a run oriented team. That's why I was so pissed about the Broncos loss. Those are situations we should be able to thrive in as a unit. But when we're not doing that, you have to find a way to utilize rollouts, utilize play action. Aaron Rodgers does it as well as anybody else you'll find in the league. We've seen all the snips and clips about, Aaron Rodgers showing guys how to really accentuate rolling out and showing the ball and tucking things away, keeping it close to the vest. So there's been a lot of teaching. There hasn't been a ton of execution. There hasn't been a ton of elite game planning, elite adaptability. I would really say any adaptability at all. I keep using the term elite, but we haven't seen consistent elements of organizations that are out here functioning, right? So I don't know where we go from here. Hopefully, this lights a fire. And one of the biggest things that I'm curious about, though, is that we're currently in the midst of the Devonte Adams trade rumor stuff that's going on, and it's not necessarily a rumor. He's confirmed it. I've seen a bunch of stuff so far, and I'm trying to get a video out for that at some point later. But I'm curious because we've seen Salah comment on some things in regards to post-game press conferences and just throughout the course of the offseason. And then we've seen Rodgers get asked about those same sentiments. And there's definitely a disconnect there. So I would be curious to know, especially with the drama the media tried to drum up about the flare-ups we've seen between Garrett Wilson and Rodgers during joint practices or mini camp, training camp practices. I want to know what his thoughts are in regards to this, right? Because I have to imagine with the level of power that I'm sure Aaron Rodgers still holds within this organization, he's signing off on a lot of these game plans. So is it execution? Is it him not being synced up and on the same page as Garrett Wilson? Is it something else? I'm sure we'll hear about it at some point prior to our game kicking off this week. But let me know what you guys think. Ultimately, I don't know what the projected numbers are for Garrett Wilson. I, frankly, don't care a ton, but I have to imagine that it looks like a huge struggle for him to even crack the 1,000-yard mark this year. And for most of us that thought he could probably reach double digits and do all that crazy stuff, it doesn't look good. And if we do find a way to somehow acquire Devontae Adams here, those numbers are going to take even a further hit. Although I will say, for as many concerns as I have about bringing in Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson would immediately become one of the most dangerous slot weapons, or if he does end up still lining up on the outside, the most dangerous number two option in an offense in the league, right? So I like the ring to that. But let me know what you guys think. Game plan wise, Garrett Wilson, why things aren't working out so well. And as always, I appreciate the support, and I'll catch you guys again. Peace.